Okay.
1, 2, 3. Yay!
All right, and that gives us the official start of really what is the first episode of How to Be Friends with Dave and Shawn, a brand spanking new podcast by a couple of genuinely blue collar guys that are busy as heck, but
Yep.
is still finding time to do this.
Yeah.
So, I am Dave, a man with a face for coronavirus masks and a voice for Kermit the Frog. And you are, of course, Shawn, man with a face for radio, but a voice for radio.
I have a face for a dark room.
As little exposure as possible.
Yes, I'm very pasty and white. The sun's the enemy.
Yeah, so just a brief explanation for why we're here. We are here because you and I have been friends for some time. We're finding ourselves in this coronavirus world where people are struggling to be friends. You and I do not struggle to be friends for more than a decade now. And so, in this world of being, we're here basically just to catch up on each other's weeks, hash out things that are legitimately important. There's plenty of podcasts out there that focus on politics and finance and all of these other things. We're focusing just on what the heck we want to talk about, right?
Yeah. Kind of the goal.
So with that being said, kind of had an eventful week. This last week, I sent my soldiers on deployment. You and I share military experience. We both have been military reservists. I still serve. You are now out making use of your life. I am unfortunately still in. And so the reserves are a unique place where we send troops all the time for a variety of different things. In this particular case, we sent troops on a humanitarian aid mission in Central America. I didn't get to go with the troops that I trained up for 6 months. And that sucks. Really feel bad. Wish I were with them.
Yeah, especially when you went through all the training with them and you built time each other and then you're not part. That does stink. It's also very challenging. Let's see, how long was I with? 8 years. I tried to go on a few different missions, but really the only thing that ever came up was the humanitarians. I'm married with kids, and it really wasn't something I could do. It stinks to train and put that much effort into something and then never get to utilize
You got to utilize it. You and
it. A few times.
yeah.
Yeah.
You and I got to do some pretty cool missions together.
Yeah, but it stinks when you were given you could do it. But yeah, we did get the opportunity, and it was good. But especially when you train with a group that long, take part in it. Yeah, that's
Now, I don't want to make a direct comparison of myself and one of the patients that I got to work with because I've been lucky enough to work in a part of healthcare where I'm one step above hospice, where I work in dialysis, and the average lifespan statistically of a dialysis patient is about 5 years. They don't last long. Some will go forever. Some they're there and gone within a year. But thankfully, we have gotten to work with the last of our World War II veterans, and I had one particular soldier who, at least as he described it, or one patient, excuse me, he was a soldier, but as he described it, his unit was ready to deploy on D-Day. However, he was adopted. As a result, when he was supposed to deploy with his unit, he, or better said, the Army, found that he was the only son of his family as a result of his adoption. His blood family, he was the only one, and he actually got pulled from the mission right before they deployed. Of course, only to find out that 90% of the people that he had gone through basic and AIT and so forth with died on the beaches of Normandy. So I couldn't help but think of him because I had this kind of like feeling of, oh, it sucks that I'm the one sitting here when everyone else goes out. Imagine a situation then where if you're the one sitting there when your guys go to Normandy instead of Central America.
Well, see, that was the thing. If for me, there was always this like weird regret, I guess, because a couple years in, I tried to go active. I don't know if you remember that. And I went to the Navy and I went to the Marine Corps, and ET test was fine at the time. And my ASVAB scores, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, which is
beautiful,
which is the military book equivalent of the Pacer Graham fitness test. And I went in and I was like, hey, I want to go active. And they're like, we're not taking prior service. We're only taking newbies. Unless you were, he's like, you're a medic? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, we're overstrained on medics. Are you airborne certified? And I was like, no, because I'm a reservist and I want to go active. So I was very disheartened because it was this thing that I really loved and I really wanted to do. Come to find out, my father and my wife could not have been happier because that was their fear. They were honestly happy. They were like, it wasn't meant to be, obviously, reason. And you're here with us. And I don't regret it because of that. And I'm sure that his life took a completely different course because of that.
Which is funny, too, because I remember that exact same thing when I went to go join the military. I wasn't one of those people who walked into the office and signed on the dotted line real quick. It took me a good 6 months of talking about contracts and this and that. And so there was a process of talking to people, getting people's opinions and so forth. Before I was in, everyone was like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. It's dangerous, it's stupid, it's blah, blah, blah. And to be fair, they're not wrong. But the second after the hand was raised and I was sworn in, a lot of those same people shifted right over to, it's an awesome thing. Thank you for your service, blah, blah, blah. The things that soldiers are used to getting. So it's interesting that, yeah, before the threshold and after the threshold, sometimes the message is completely different.
No, I agree. And my recruiter, she tried to talk me into active multiple times. She goes, you're not. She goes, I got to know my recruiter well. Awesome lady. Didn't push me to do anything I didn't want to do. Didn't have to. I came into it.
Absolutely.
Like, I can tell by the type of person you are, you're going to be absolutely miserable as a recruiter. Because you are going to want to do real Army things and have real Army opportunities. I was like, and at this point, I was like, no, I want to come back home. No, so it all happens for a reason, though. I mean,
yeah.
And you chose the reserves just like I did because of the opportunity, being able to maintain some semblance of being a civilian. In hindsight, man, if like right now I couldn't call in sick, but my job required me to go to my company doctor would allow me to call in sick or not, I'd be like, this is yes, I'm an adult. I can decide I'm sick. So there's a lot of things I'm grateful for. I don't have to deal with.
Right. Okay, so this was something interesting too. This is something that'll probably come up in a great deal in our conversations as well. The comparisons between active duty and we have a ghost. That's spectacular.
Yeah, you're fine. Keep going.
Active duty and reserves. Okay, so it is totally okay to call the reserves kind of the fat red-headed stepchild and children of the military. That's kind of okay. But to be fair, we do a lot of good, and there are different challenges. And one of the big challenges is exactly what your recruiter was talking about. There's a lot of active duty soldiers who will come to the reserves to try to finish their contract out, either their remaining period of time or to retirement. Yeah, it does not go well.
They go insane. So
absolutely.
It's like Shutter Island.
Because, okay, when you're active duty, you are told exactly what to do, how to do it, where to be, when to be. It is cut and dry, get to work. And that's why a lot of people hate active duty because, like you say, that they're boxed in.
Right.
But then the shift over to the reserves where it's you show up and there's a lot of, all right, what's next, guys? That just absolutely kills a lot of soldiers. But in my particular case, I ended up going reserves instead of active duty because I didn't have these loopholes that other people had for custody of my son. So it was a choice
Right.
of, dad or soldier. I love being a soldier. Dad kind of trumps that though.
Yeah, no, in fairness, I mean, and I tried to go active while I was kids, but the whole, I mean, out fine. Um, yeah, I will say there is a transition period for the poor active duty who come on. I will say one of my biggest pet peeves with the reserves is you have to pack a month's worth of work to maintain an entire deployable unit in 2 or 3 days. So
Yes.
you I'm sure it's still this way. Okay, week out, commander's sending you the schedule, right? Okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
what we're gonna do at 1800 or 0800. We're gonna do this, and then they're gonna have a class, and then second platoon's gonna do training, and then
Mm-hmm.
first formation Saturday morning. Okay, we got a bunch of down trace.
Yep.
So I have a
Yeah.
list of 28 things we have to accomplish today before we can actually continue our mission. That's what drove me insane because I wanted to do medic stuff and we never got to do medic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And bless the army. I I don't think personally I need um, 4 annual sexual harassment classes. No touchy touchy,
Only
totally
4.
understood.
That's
But
right.
yeah, they they were on top of
Okay. So just real quick before we
it. Yep.
get too far into this, I do want to mention that this podcast is being sponsored by Male Pattern Baldness. That's right. When I was 34, I had a full head of hair. I married my now ex-wife. I do not have that hair anymore.
I
And I saved money on haircuts. I saved money on hair product. And that's okay by me.
Here's the disappointing part to me about male pattern baldness. It's never a cool pattern. Like you never see somebody with male pattern baldness who looks like a zebra. It's just like it just recedes. There's never like a cool pattern. Like, is what is that on your head, Orion? Yeah, you don't get a cool pattern out of it.
No.
Yeah, no. I'm I'm sorry you've been sponsored by male pattern baldness. I've been sponsored by Chia Pet actually this week. And it's interesting. So I shaved my head 2 weeks ago, and my wife
Yes.
spread like this weird mud seed mixture on my head, and you can see it sprouting nicely.
Chia
So
pets are awesome. Okay,
Chia Pets.
I said it.
Yeah, I. You know what? It's the only thing I can
This really is just two schmoes gabbing
grow.
and posting. And if something ever happens as a result of this, I would gladly welcome Chia Pets as a sponsor. I encourage that. This okay, so anyone who's actually listening to this, this is the newest and babiest podcast ever. Congratulations.
Oh
If
yeah,
you
like if we're 4 years down the line and we continue to do this and we accomplish to have 20 listeners, and you hit the back catalog and hit this point, one, thank you. Two, I'm so sorry. Because that means you've run out of a back catalog of like The Adventure Zone, My Brother and Me, Jordan Jesse Go, My Favorite Murder. That means you've chewed through all of these
all
things
of
and
it.
you were like, yeah, this will do.
Yeah. And the sad part about that is there's this huge appetite for podcasts right now because of the fact that we do just grind through those. I have no idea what people are doing, but so many people would rather turn on a podcast than they would flipping a TV show full of commercials or something anymore.
Well,
It's either a
honestly, You know what I think it is? I think it is one, we don't have cable anymore. There's no point to it.
Right.
We have Hulu and that stuff, and so a show gets released, and they release all of it, and you can binge it, and then it's over, and then you got to wait
Yes.
9 months. The only things that are keeping me going, like, ooh, I can't wait to see that next week, are The Mandalorian
Which is great.
and the podcasts I listen to,
Right.
because I don't get to binge those. I get to look forward to those. Like, I get notifications on my phone. I got one today about 3 of the podcasts I listen to. Oh my gosh, yes. So
Hmm.
yeah, and so I get to binge things like, let's see, Utopia and Upload on Amazon Prime, and then I finish them, and then I don't have anything to do. So I think podcasts kind of fill that need to wait.
Uh-huh.
That
Now,
exists.
I'm enjoying The Mandalorian too, and just real quick on that, Disney, don't sue us for talking about your stuff. Come on, moving forward. I I really like that they're doing this weekly releases on the episodes, even though they've probably filmed them all, blah blah blah, because that does keep the interest over a longer period of time. But comparatively, it's not consuming any more or less of time in your life. It's just Friday comes out, an episode comes out, you watch it for less than an hour, and you're like, all right, I guess I'll wait around for another week.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah, no, and I agree. But I think it also creates some. So if you, I don't, somebody's listening to this right now, we are. I don't know. We're on the second string COVID. Things are weird. There's no schedule to anything. A lot of people don't have anything to do outside of work, so there's nothing in place to set my week. Right? I work really
Right.
weird hours. I work long anyways, but I know when Friday comes around, I get to watch that. And I know when Wednesday comes around, I get to listen to this, and it like provides some structure
Hmm.
in an otherwise wackadoo, crazy, unstructured world that we're in right now. So I like that. I like that regular. I like having something to look to.
Speaking of COVID, how's that 6 foot distancing treating you?
So let me thank you for bringing this up. Just about show notes. I can understand where people are coming from on the mask thing that don't have training or experience. And I'm not going to argue this as a political thing. Wearing a mask isn't hard.
No.
And eventually we won't have to wear them anymore. But what I do want to maintain is you staying 6 feet the hell away from me, because I like it a lot. I am not. I'm not an antisocial person. I'm not. I'm happy to talk to people. I really am. But I don't like your spittle on me. And a lot of times your breath smells really bad. And I don't like you to be able to touch me. And a lot of people are touchy. Not big on touchy. Don't do touchy. So you staying 6 feet away from me is a wonderful thing. I love it. I want to maintain that. I really do. It makes me feel good that people aren't allowed to be close to me.
Yes.
I really don't. And it makes me feel good that I live right now in a world where if somebody's too close, I can be like, hey, back up.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, because of COVID. And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Because of COVID.
Yeah, because of COVID. No, no, I don't want you that close to me. I am not. I've never liked that. I cannot stand people being close to me. I will back away from talking to me. I will back away when my father, and this is nothing against my father. This is just how when he talks to me, he gets very close. And he is my father, and it doesn't upset me, but that's not the distance I relate. So while my father is talking to me, I will back away from him, but then he closes the distance, and we end up walking in this weird big circle. So, but it's just who I've always been. Not big on that. So I love the 6 foot distancing. I really do. Also, side note, if you wear
Yes.
your nose out of your mask,
It's
I'm
yeah.
automatically going to assume it's because your breath is so bad, even you can't stand it, and you're trying to isolate it. So
Ah,
that's
that's a new
that's
take.
that's what I think it is.
Uh-huh.
Even you know your breath is nasty.
Speaking of, though, this is backpedaling again to
Please, back that.
another challenge of being a reservist in the world where reservists are weird. We there are a few places that I hate to go in uniform. Uh, Walmart is one of them. If I'm leaving drill or whatever, and I'm running an errand on my way home, and I'm in uniform, and I go to Walmart, historically, it was like the only place, you get used to the thank you for your service, thank you for your support, blah, blah, blah. You get used to this. In Walmart, I had to get used to getting hugs, which is the last place on earth I want a hug from someone at.
No, yeah, no, 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 yeah, no. Hugging's bad. No, no, don't
But
thank me with a hug.
I will say that hasn't happened to me in a few years, and I think in the moment of this podcast, I think I figured out why. It would happen most commonly while I was a specialist.
Okay.
Now that I've worked my way up to staff sergeant, I think either A, people have seen the rank as busy enough to leave him the heck alone, or B, I've finally been in the army long enough to have that leave me the alone look on my face that thank heavens I don't get the hugs in
Well,
Walmart anymore.
it took you long enough. I developed that years ago.
What you were born with? I think you
Oh,
came out with RBF.
yeah, my wife is the first to tell me. She's like, when we were in public, you were the most unapproachable person I have ever seen. And I'm like, fantastic, mission
Mm-hmm.
accomplished. Don't
Yes.
approach me. I'm not an unfriendly person, but don't hug me or thank me. It's completely unnecessary. And unfortunately for you, and I won't out it, um, the reserve center you serve out of.
This is right next door to a
Let me put it this
Walmart.
way: somebody shoplifting and running out the doors is going to run into the parking lot of the reserve center. you,
Yes.
you were so close. So
There-
unfortunately,
Yeah.
Walmart is the easiest place to go. You can't avoid that.
Correct.
But yeah, no, yeah, you probably have just developed the unapproachable face. I'm proud of you for that. I really am.
Okay, a couple of things here.
Yeah.
So first off, in order to give people some bread and butter to have week by week, you and I have gathered together some good news.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yes.
podcasts are news. A lot of
Yeah.
news sucks. You and
Yeah.
I. So just for anyone listening, my friend Shawn and I communicate throughout the week about things that we might want to talk about. So we've got this little list of good news that we've shared with each other. And I want you to open up with the damn giraffes, please.
Oh, yeah. So this was wonderful. So it's not a very intensive story. Um, let's see here. Let me put it this way. There were a bunch of giraffes. There were like 8 endangered giraffes trapped on an island, and they were surrounded by crocodile-infested waters. And a bunch of conservationists and government officials, they like just built a raft, and they moved these giraffes off this island with a raft. And this is not the Army Corps of Engineers came in and floated them out. This is like, let's just strap some logs together and
Yeah,
go get some giraffe.
this
It's
was
basically
yeah.
like it's a poorly planned out Ocean's 11, which everybody thought. But I think it's wonderful that just a group of people who were
Yeah, it was
concerned
it
about
was
the welfare
villagers.
of
Yeah.
animals, yeah, just built a raft and took these things apart. And it's nice to see things like that where it wasn't a government red tape thing where we're going to ask for the support from these people and do this and then we got to do this. It was just like, yeah, well, just get it done. It's really cool to see stuff like that.
Okay, but you're downplaying a little bit. I got to give these people credit where credit's due, because again, just villagers, a few government people. But if you want any concept of how difficult it is to transport a giraffe over alligator-infested waters, what I want you to do is I want you to get in a canoe and stand up.
Yeah, no, so here's the thing. Like this raft is like pretty wide and it looks relatively stable. Like there's guys hanging off the side of it if you look at the photo. Um, this raft is also like 6 inches out of the water in crocodile infested waters. And there's
Uh-huh.
dudes just standing around it with a giraffe. They're like,
Yes.
yeah, this is not like we took safety precautions. Let me put it this way. OSHA would pass out if they saw this
Yes, they would.
because this looks incredibly dangerous. But it's also absolutely beautiful. Like the construction involved in it, it's so beautiful. Uh, the giraffes can stand up to 20 feet tall and weigh up to 2,500 pounds. So imagine taking a Volkswagen and making a Play-Doh snake out of it. That's a giraffe. Um, yeah. And for several months, the rangers familiarized the giraffes with rescue craft on land until recently, when they took, which means that on a regular basis, they had this raft on land, and they were like, "Come on, giraffe, do this." And a giraffe would
Goading.
kind of put a foot on it, get scared, and they'd be like, "Okay, we'll try again tomorrow." So they basically just spent months training giraffes to get on rafts,
Yes.
which sounds like an excellent children's book. So yeah, it made me very happy. It floats atop a series of empty drums for buoyancy. Reinforced sides kept Asiwa from jumping out as the barge was gently maneuvered by boats.
Which must have been the name of that particular giraffe, yes?
Asiwa, yeah, Asiwa was the giraffes, one of the giraffes. Required a
Don't
mate.
don't name your child Asiwa.
Don't, or else
Don't do
it'll
that.
jump out of your boat. So yeah,
Again.
I thought that was wonderful. Yeah.
Totally unrelated to that, on the technology spectrum. Okay, this is not meant to be controversial. I'm welcome to take questions about anyone who, like I say, like you were saying, 4 years from now, if we have 20 listeners, you go back and listen to this. This is a little bit controversial for me to say, but it is factually accurate to say that most green energies are not green. I know. I'm sorry. Hear me out. Solar panels, windmills, they never pan out economically. You never do make your money back on them. And unfortunately, the materials used in creating them, maintaining them, tearing them down, it ain't good for the planet. Particularly the gigantic windmill blades do not recycle. And they're huge. If you've ever seen these being transported down the road, they're massive. They
Now they
sit
don't
in landfills.
recycle because of the material that they're made out of.
Correct. They're a composite material. In order to be efficient, they have to be super light. There has to be that weight ratio, and as a result, they don't recycle. Now, for those of you who have been triggered or upset by what I just said, I'm also not saying that we shouldn't do that. I actually would love to have those sort of things, windmills and solar panels on individual homes. I think that they're more efficient that way. And I think as you work on things, you can learn different things. And apparently, we are now finally learning how to recycle those windmill blades. And we're recycling them. GE and a couple of other companies are getting together to use them in the construction of concrete, the processing of concrete. I don't know whether or not this will be as cheap as regular concrete processing, but the point is, if we're going to do something, try to do it right, and it sounds like people are doing it right, and that sounds to me like good news.
Well, no, that is great news. That does seem to be a kind of a running issue, right? Like we're so apt to create the next big thing that nobody thinks through the process of its entire existence. Oh man, nuclear energy is awesome. And then, everybody at the time was like, "Ah, we'll figure out what to do with these spent fuel rods eventually, I guess." Right?
Eventually.
Or they create these things. You have these batteries in, you know, hybrid vehicles now, and Teslas and Hummer EV that's coming out. These wonderful batteries that have, don't get me wrong, an incredible amount of efficiency, and the development that went into them is astounding. But it does take a lot of materials and a lot of stripping and stuff to make those batteries. And I often think to myself, have we thought of a process for reusing this? And I'm sure that it will be relatively efficient, but it seems like the breakdown cleanup always comes way too late after the development of something. Nobody ever thinks that process through. So
No, I've had the same question. When
Yeah.
we get 300 million electric vehicles on the road with lithium-ion batteries in them, the Teslas, I think, they're like 64,000 lithium-ion batteries, like AA's, in a single Tesla. Last I
Right.
heard. When we get 300 million of those on the road, what the hell is it going to do to continue to get those rare earth metals out of the planet and into use?
Well, I would assume that there's a recycling process, rare earth metals, where we talk about like platinum and palladium and things like that, because
Yeah, there's a lot
I
of
don't
stuff in
I
there.
don't know if you've heard that people love stealing catalytic converters off of cars to sell them for scrap. I mean, they're in high demand money wise. So there's a market and there's a recovery market for it. My main concern with that is we talk about I'm not too worried about the vehicle safety. So if you install a car battery right now, you can just go buy a car battery and take it off the shelf and put it in your car. It's not a big deal. You're talking about 12 volts between 600 and 1,000, amps.
You'd
Um,
be all right.
if you replace the battery in a Prius, it comes packed in a box. We're talking the big battery in a Prius. It
Mhm.
comes packed in a box. Whoever you ordered that from does not open it or touch it. They cannot open it or touch it. That thing is like instant death if you do it wrong. So, my concern is down the road, what are the safety precautions for breaking all this stuff down and recycling it when this starts to become, and especially in second-hand consumer products, people are starting to buy old Priuses and install their own batteries, and they don't know what they're doing, and it gets spooky, you know. But I'm sure the market will regulate as it all it needs is demand. As long as there's demand, somebody will figure out a way to do it. I want to talk about this.
Hit me.
Okay. Um, have you ever heard of trazodone?
The name sounds familiar. My pharmacology is weak, though.
Okay, so trazodone is something I'm extremely um, familiar with from working in pain care. Trazodone is one of those medications that's commonly used. Trazodone is an antidepressant, mostly used as an antidepressant. The problem is it looks a lot like another medication, sildenafil, which let's see, family-friendly podcast. Sildenafil. Let's say you're a circus clown, a 40-year-old circus clown, and you're really having trouble making balloon animals. Sildenafil Sildenafil really helps get that balloon animal pumped up. You know what I'm talking about?
I gotcha. I'm picking up
You
what you're
got
putting
me?
down.
All right.
Yep.
Apparently, they had to issue a recall, a voluntary recall, mind you. I like how the FDA sent out a voluntary recall because they mixed up antidepressants and erectile dysfunction medication and packaged them wrong.
Spectacular.
Yes. Now, here's the there and don't get me wrong, there are health concerns with this. Trazodone is a sedative. You would not want to take thinking you're taking an erectile dysfunction drug and be taking other sedatives, prescribed and take one of these. However, if you're taking trazodone and you accidentally took one of these, I would love to see your call to the doctor. I would love to listen to that. Here's the other thing. Have you ever taken antidepressants?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. Antidepressants have this fantastic side effect where, let me put it this way. You can run the full marathon as fast as you want. You cannot cross the line. You know what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
You know
In
what
our
I'm saying?
family-friendly podcast, your balloon animal is now solid and does not pop.
Add all the Mentos you want, that Coke ain't gonna foam. You cannot get there when you're taking antidepressants sometimes. This is like the ultimate insult. Being given This is like being given a tool you can't possibly use. I have this tool, I have this hammer, and I can pound nails, but I cannot build a house. And it's just
See, I had the idea that a person on an antidepressant medication got instead erectile dysfunction medication, and who'd have thunk their depression was still treated. However, under that perspective, it's much worse. And my
yeah, you
cup
can
just
yeah.
exploded.
There are some antidepressants they will not let you finish what you started. So I was just laughing because it was nice to see something that, even though, like I said, it's risky, it was just that's like not a horror mix up. It's I think if anybody
It's a
got
humorous
that,
mix-up.
I think if anybody got that, they're gonna be okay. If
It
not,
is.
if not extremely confused, because a guy who took his erectile dysfunction drug is now sitting on his couch pondering his own existence.
This is good news. This falls into the good news category for two reasons. Number one, the FDA can catch themselves in being dumb. That's nice. Number two, they can give you a choice what to do with that dumb. Maybe you just ride the lightning.
Yeah. The other quick thing I wanted to cover was that after 51 years, Zodiac Killer's 340 cipher was cracked.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Basically, you had this group of guys. This thing was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. We're talking 51 years ago. This is
Sure.
not like you and me being able to do Sudoku and have it solved with our computer. It is an ongoing investigation, but like most, over time, it kind of gets cold. So technically, this is still an ongoing open investigation for the FBI, but they were able to decode this 340 cipher, such called because it has 340 characters, that was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. I would, if anybody has no idea who the Zodiac Killer is or anything like that, I encourage you to get up. Um, but basically, they were able to decode this thing, and it was just the rantings of a madman. I mean, there was nothing in it that helps in any way figure out anything. But it was just nice to see that a few groups of, a few different people were like, hey, let's take a crack at it. And they actually solved it.
So, much like many other serial killers, there wasn't some sort of secret to behold. There wasn't some sort of amazing message to be found. He was just a broken, evil person.
Yeah.
And now at least we have it resolved that he had nothing to contribute except awful.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's. I think there's been a resurgence as of late with digging into the past in these things. There's a bunch of Netflix shows about them. I'm not even going to give them. I'm not even going to name them, mainly because I kind of don't like the way they tackle a lot of them. Yeah, there was the one that came out, and then all of a sudden on social media, everybody was like, "Wow, Ted Bundy was cute." And I'm like, if
Ah.
you're portraying people in a certain way that are purely evil, but you're trying to get people's attention, so you're portraying it in a certain way. But I think there has been this resurgence in wanting to know about this guy. Hit Wikipedia, you will find that he murdered 5 victims between December of '68 and October of '69. He targeted young couples, 2 of the men surviving the attempted murder. Um, and then San Francisco Police Department marked the case inactive in 2004, but reopened it in 2007. So what's going on with this thing? Who knows? We're talking late 70. The guy was probably in his late 30s or 40s. I mean, so who knows where
If
he is
we
now?
haven't if we haven't already caught him under some other name, then
Right.
he's some old fella just withering away.
Yeah, it's I just thought it was kind of cool that, even though it didn't really accomplish anything. But, hopefully it does. Hopefully it'll give some insight to the FBI or not. But if after 51 years they haven't swabbed that thing like 27 times for DNA, I don't know.
Right. Okay. One more quick thing, and then we're probably going to have to start wrapping this up fairly soon. But again, if anyone listens to this podcast years from now, there will be a hidden episode that I will keep tucked away, which was our first attempt at recording this. Maybe someday that'll be released as a bonus episode, but the reason that I'm bringing that up is because the last time you wanted to talk about your medical brain versus dealing with gender in the modern world.
Yes.
And I didn't want to blow by another episode without hitting that, so hit me with that.
Yeah, okay. So, all right. 20 years ago, there were two genders.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that. And now there are many genders. So many I can't even keep track of. And first of all, your business is your business. If you're not hurting me or my family in any way, you do you. I want to put that out there right now. I am the type of person where I just want to treat everybody kindly, and I want everybody to treat me kindly. And you live your life, and you do what makes you happy, and you don't hurt other people. And I'm totally happy with that. The problem with that part of me, my heart brain, and my medical brain is my medical brain can't find where the line is. And when I say that, when you are trained to treat in trauma or
Mm-hmm.
trained to treat, at a field hospital capacity,
Mm-hmm.
all that I am concerned about is male or female, because there are
Correct.
some huge factors that come along with that. If we are talking about an abdominal injury or unknown bleeding, things like that, I need to know male or female because the
Mm-hmm.
anatomy is different, things like that. Regardless of your identification, there has to be a line somewhere where I can define that. And the part of me that doesn't know how that's going to work is with the future of medicine. And when I say that, it doesn't mean I'm transgendered and you're going to treat me differently, or I'm male and identify as female and treat you differently. When I say that, it comes from a genuine concern that healthcare is very slow. Healthcare has been extremely slow to recognize a lot of things. If you want a great example of that, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about my grandfather served in Korea, my father in Vietnam. And when they came back, post traumatic stress disorder was a suck it up function. It
Yes.
was, there's nothing wrong with you, you need to suck it up. Now we are at the point, finally, where there is a balance between the physical aspect and the mental health aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It has only been in the last 10 or 15 years that healthcare has honestly acknowledged the fact that somebody's mental health is completely uh, ingrained in their physical health.
Mm-hmm.
In order to treat a patient properly, you have to understand the mental health aspect of it. You have to understand, be able to identify with them, see where they're coming from. That is part of the holistic approach, right? When I say
Mm-hmm.
holistic, I don't mean it in the hippie way. I mean it in we
All
treat
encompassing.
we have to treat the entirety of the patient.
Yes.
And I think if the medical field is slow to pick up on these things or slow to understand them, as they have been, it's going to really create a lot of problems down the line. And if you look at how transgender people have been treated by the medical community, I think you're going to see how slow that has been to come up. I think if you look at how the gay community was treated during the AIDS epidemic and coming up and being treated, you're going to see how slow that can be to catch on. So it really concerns me for the health and welfare down the line of people who aren't simply male or female, because I'm really fearful of how the medical community as a whole is going to respond to the treatment of those individuals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you feel about that. That's my concern. And that's why I say my medical brain. doesn't click with that because my medical brain was never taught how to deal with that or how to work
Yes.
with that. What do you think about it?
So this when we get into things like this is a podcast about perspectives. Yes, we have our opinions, but I
No,
want to emphasize.
this is all just my perspective, of course.
Right.
Right?
There's
I
a lot
don't
of
have any scientific backing. The only thing I can go off is history.
right. Uh, there's a lot to be understood in the perspective of people, and looking at that perspective can certainly help in that case as well. If you have a person who feels like what they were born with is not what they actually are, understanding that perspective can be difficult for me. We do have to be sensitive to that, and you're 100% right that the medical world can be slow. However, by that same note, there also has to be objectivity in it. There has to be the ability to divide, like you say, the things that we have to do based on the physical characteristics of a person. If a person has a penis, if a person has a vagina, and all of the genetic hormonal cocktail that comes with those things, we have to be objective enough to be able to say, okay, this is physically what this person has.
Of course.
And what makes it difficult to be objective about it is because people are so impassioned about it. You know, I guess I'll give an anecdote related to this. I've only had one transgender patient in the hundreds of patients that I've worked with. I'll talk about him in a second because I get to know my patients very, very well. But we have to take the passion down. We can't get into this world where we're busily setting laws in place. And I'm going to refer actually back, you had mentioned the gay community. The gay community was very good about making certain things taboo without making them legal. A bundle of sticks or a British word for a cigarette, a three-lettered F word, was torpedoed by the gay community without having to make it a law. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, in dealing medically with people.
Now, again, we live on the West Coast. Go to the East Coast. It's a popular word on the East Coast, but it's
Yeah,
just a word. It's not
right.
usually referred to as
Just a
any
word.
specific person. But yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying.
So, I had an interesting case with this patient, and if, this is just an anecdote. This is just a perspective. Like I say, this is one data point of one person. This person was transgender well before it was a hot button. This fella in his late 70s now, and his whole life he was trying to transition to a female. He went through the hormone therapy. He he I didn't see the pictures. My coworkers saw pictures of him when he was younger, when he was in drag and so forth. They said he made a beautiful woman. When he came to us, we were told by our social workers who were handling it, which is correct, by the way. That's 100% correct. Start with the social workers. The social workers who were handling him coming in, that he was to be referred to as a she. He had a name, a female name that he was to be referred by, etc., etc. And I'm not misgendering him right now by calling him a he so much, because when I started working with him, this was my first real chance to do this, and I was like on it. I was like, I got this. I love my patients. I'm going to take care of my patients. I'm not going to screw up and call her a him, blah, blah, blah. And it was only a week working with this patient. And he looks up at me. He says, you know, you don't have to do all that. And I'm like, do all of what? He's like, you can call me he, you can call me by my male name, etc. I said, wait, am I about to get in trouble for this? He's like, no, I kind of gave all that stuff up years ago. And I'm like, really? You spent your whole life working on this. Tell me more about it. He says, it's exhausting. He
Yeah.
said, it was a thing that he was working for, and he thought it was important. And now, perspective of the elderly is incredible because it really puts things, anything that really didn't matter, you find out didn't matter. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that transgenderism doesn't matter. I'm saying this fella spent his whole life working towards this thing. Finally, at the end of his life, he was like, I have more important things to do, and he focused on those. And I was like, okay, I have learned a lot right now, and I continue to learn a lot from this particular patient. He's a wonderful guy and a wonderful perspective to learn from.
It really is. It is nice to get that feedback from somebody, especially somebody who's dedicated their life to being the person they want to be. And I think it's very telling that they became exhausted by simply trying to get people to understand them.
And humorously, I love working with him too because healthcare is like the only place where a cisgendered white male is rare, and so I work with a bunch of ladies, and all of the male patients are constantly like, "Oh, you guys are so beautiful," blah blah blah. I have this like one patient who is clearly and obviously homosexual, and he thinks that I'm the cutest little thing, and I'm just like, "Oh, you sweet fella, thanks for making my day."
I had patients like that too. And I would just come out. He thinks you're cute. And my first response was, "Oh,
Right? You
nice
can't help
to
but
feel
feel
cute."
good.
Like, not offended at all. I'm sorry. Like, hey, you're cute. Yeah, stop.
But actually, it was really funny. There was another patient that did this. My boss said to me in the most hilarious of ways. I did not know this about this patient, that he was homosexual, and I just thought he was a cool guy. I was like, he usually ran on a shift that I didn't work, and he was coming up on day shift or something. I was like, oh, great to see him. Yeah, it'll be cool to have him again. And my boss says, she says, yeah, he thinks that the day shift techs are just the absolute cutest people. I was like, well, yeah, we do work with a lot of cute ladies. That's true. And she says, no, he doesn't really swing that way. And I'm like, but boss, there aren't really any other men that work on the. Oh, I see
Oh,
what you did there. It was wonderful.
no, it's always nice to get feedback, like positive feedback. I've never understood why people. I don't know. I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't raised to think less of other people because they're different than me. So whenever I
Right.
get that feedback, it's not like, oh, I'm offended or oh, gross. I'm like, oh, thanks. Really
I,
appreciate it.
and the joke is, of course, if I run into the people who get genuinely offended by something like that, they're like, "Ah, oh, that's disgusting," or those are the people that I wonder if they really are the closet homosexuals. Honestly,
Yeah. So, gosh, were you? This was the best. Were you at the unit when we repealed "Don't Ask, Don't Tell"?
yes.
Okay. We all, and this is the old. This is the old Vancouver barracks.
Mm-hmm.
The old haunted building.
Stories will be in podcast from that later.
We're up there, and we're going over "Don't Ask, Don't Tell." Being repealed, you can now be openly gay in the military. And this one dude stood up and he goes, well, yeah, but I don't feel comfortable showering with another dude who's gay. What if he looks at my penis? To which, from the back, one of the gay, it had to be one of the gay soldiers. It's like, none of us would ever want to look at your penis. it
Perfect.
just, it
Perfect.
sealed it. It
Yes.
sealed it because it's just that weird paranoia and oddness that people have around that, and the rest of us are like, what?
Right.
What is the deal with you? You didn't have a problem showering with me before when
And
I
furthermore,
accidentally saw your penis in the shower, and I was like, ugh, penis. You know,
and again, why get uncomfortable? If suddenly you have equipment sufficient to be checked out, take that as the compliment it is.
I can honestly say that Diana was like, I would avoid that dude like the plague.
Yes.
He's not my cup of tea.
No.
Thank you, no. So but to circle back, it's just one of those things where I have these concerns because I work with people who are trans, and I have friends identify different, and I have customers who do.
Mhm.
When I say differently from, um, and it concerns me seeing the way they're treated by society as a whole, and then wondering how they're going to be treated by the medical community, considering how women were once treated with their mental health issues.
Yes.
You know.
Which that'll come up in a later podcast. We do have to wrap up for this. Now,
Oh yes. No.
we will be doing these podcasts every week. If you're
Yes.
listening, we'll record them on Sunday. I will try to post them throughout the week. I am learning how to polish them. I expect that we will spend a long time in obscurity, and as a result, these will be banked up uh,
Oh my God.
so that there will be plenty of content by the time that we're discovered. That being said, if you are listening to this, I can be reached at latterdayliger@gmail.com or comments on the channel. Obviously, the video, please like, subscribe, all of the stuff with that. But latterdayliger@gmail.com is LATTERDAY, Liger, LIGER. Would you like to plug some of your more social media will come from my end. Would you like to plug your social
Oh
media?
man, you can't hear it now, but you'll be able to play it and hear it in playback. My wife just burned something in the kitchen and like 5 smoke alarms.
Yes!
My daughter just ran and they're freaking out. Oh my god.
Yes. This is a yes. Hold on.
This
Okay, this is a real podcast. I hope whoever listens to this enjoys that this is a slice of life because that's beautiful. All
that's
right,
fantastic.
hit me with
I
your
said on
stuff.
Twitter it is I felt guilty once. My Twitter is at I felt guilty once. You can tweet me there. I don't have an email or anything for that. That's really the only purpose that that thing serves.
Beautiful.
Um, Tweet us what you thought. Tweet us what you didn't like. I'll look at it, read the comments, but give me some feedback there. My God, can you hear that?
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up.
There might be an actual fire. I
So
don't
you
know.
can go take care of that. I
Okay.
have been Dave. You have been Shawn. Have an awesome evening.
Good night.
Good night.